Donald Trump wants more control of Canada's borders, so much so that we might see U.S. agencies on Canadian soil doing their own levels of policing. And against all his campaign promises and his voters' wishes, it looks like Mark Carney is going to work with the U.S. on that and make it happen. But it actually does need to happen because we just had a new documentary drop showing a shared problem between Canada and the US that has to do with another country that is not only impacting safety, but also has an economic value of tens of billions of dollars in opportunity cost, and it needs to be shut down right now. But a piece of good news is Canada is finally beating the US at something. Canada #1, baby. Americans, you're going to be mad when you hear this. But when it comes to security and the economy, of course, we got to put Canada's top big-brained politicians on that. We have some funny clips towards the end of the video, but it could be worse, guys. We could be France. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it.
The law is designed to strengthen the border and make the country safer, but as Mackenzie Gray explains, there was concern it went too far. Mackenzie.
Days after forming government, Donna, the Liberals proposed a sweeping overhaul to Canada's border and policing laws, a bill so controversial the Public Safety Minister has been forced to partially back down.
This happened as a result of conversations I've had with a number of people. This is not coming from PMO or anyone else.
But the Prime Minister's office had routinely played up the border bill with the Trump administration to show Canada was serious about fentanyl coming over the border, pointing to a clause that allowed letter mail to be opened if there were reasonable grounds to suspect there was contraband inside.
So a couple things that I want to address that we've passed over. One is the safety minister has been accused of being part of political enthusiast groups, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Also, we have a massive mail strike happening in Canada right now, and one of the things that I had theorized, and I still think is something they're wanting to do, which is they wanted to give Canada Post this job to give them some level of security designation so that they could say this is defense spending, and that's how we're going to file the spending when it comes to the public budget, so they could keep mail alive and say, look, we get to check out these packages, and now the Canada Post has the power to open the private citizen's mail, which, you know, was obviously crazy.
That garnered criticism from over 300 civil liberties groups and the opposition parties, leading it, along with 4 other sections of Bill C-2, to be dropped as a part of a new bill tabled Wednesday.
We've had a number of conversations with the Americans over the last several months, and those conversations will continue.
This is the Liberal Party of Canada, whose entire campaign was saying the relationship with the United States is over. We are rupturing that relationship. It's done. We need to move away to other countries, other economies, all of that stuff. Now we've seen a deepening in border security partnerships, a deepening in the integration between the two countries. You guys know we love America on the channel. I ain't got no problem with that. But the fact is, it is directly against everything they ran on. Once again, that guy who was speaking there, political enthusiast groups, 3 times connected, insane that he's the safety minister.
Including conversations in the Oval Office when Trump was asked about fentanyl on Tuesday, which is the administration's reasoning for why there are many tariffs on Canada.
The fentanyl crisis.
No, it's not over. I think it's never going to be over, frankly. But Canada's worked hard, and they've done a much better job than in the past.
The Prime Minister pointing out that nearly none of the fentanyl that goes to the U.S. comes from Canada.
On fentanyl, any amount is too much. So we've gotten it down. It's down substantially. It's less than 1%, but it's still too much.
The Liberals were also under fire for a clause that required anyone that provides a service, like a doctor, daycare, or internet provider, to give over your personal information without a warrant if there's a reasonable suspicion you committed a crime, Donna. Provisions the Liberals will still hope to get through Parliament in the original bill, which has not been withdrawn.
This bill, which they're saying is a border security bill, is basically just stripping civilian rights completely, which is wild. I also love that he's zero tolerance on this stuff coming over the border until it comes to crime. But as I mentioned, Donald Trump and the Americans want more direct control on the Canadian border, on Canadian security, which they should, because when I get to that clip from the documentary, you will see how big of a problem it is. So the U.S. bill calls for more integration between Canadian and American border agents. The bill could lead to U.S. law enforcement operating more freely on Canadian soil. The U.S. Congress is being asked to adopt legislation that could lead to Canada and the United States further integrating, okay? We're supposed to be separating, which we know. Mount up, patriots. I'm fine with integration. But The Liberals said we're separating, but this is going to be further integration of their enforcement of the border, including allowing U.S. officers more freely to operate on Canadian soil. Introduced by New York Republican Rep. Nicholas Langworthy, calls on U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to negotiate or amend existing agreements with the Government of Canada as appropriate for integrated cross-border aerial, maritime, and land law enforcement operations. The bill also calls for U.S. officers to operate in Canada and for Canadian officers to operate in the U.S. for the purposes of enhancing border security or law enforcement, cooperation, or operations, including the purposes of conducting operations in land, air, and maritime domains. We've seen the U.S. is obviously getting more serious about their borders as they focused on the economy and onshoring and national security. Everything that they're doing is to try and make a stronger, safer America. And right now, Canada has been a liability to the US because of our weak borders. And people don't like to say it, but for all intents and purposes, Canada is essentially a vassal state of the US. And I know people are going to say, well, Canada is a sovereign country. Meanwhile, we have more and more direct integration. And I brought up the definition of the vassal state. So Canadians, just listen to what I'm saying here. Americans, listen to what I'm saying here. Does this sound like there's crossover between the two? Because this will apply when I get to the documentary clips showing our shared problems and why the communication could make Canada and the US would be the strongest economic zone. We pretty much are the strongest economic zone in the world, but also extend another 250 years if all of these things were worked out. Well, listen to this definition. A vassal state is a nation that maintains some independence, but is dominated by a more powerful nation to which it owes obligations like paying tribute or providing military support. While specific relationships varied, the vassal state was subordinate, especially in foreign affairs, and was subject to the superior's power control to a varying degree. So, yes, to a varying degree. It's not like the US controls every single thing. Canada is still technically a sovereign nation of Canada. But when you look at our media, when you look at our sports teams, when you look at our economy, when you look at military operations, when you look at all of the things that are connected between the two countries, it seems like there's some influence there. We've seen most of these military operations, most of the things, Canada is involved, and they otherwise would not be involved if the US wasn't and we weren't there in some sort of support role. And again, there is varying degrees of autonomy. So I do think Canada is still a sovereign nation. There is still autonomy here. There's these things. Although we continue to sell ourselves out internationally and we are losing the autonomy, we are losing the sovereignty. If we are going to be completely influenced, why would it not be with the US? And why would we let it be other nations? Especially when we get into this shared problem here, and it is a huge deal. Let's get into it.
Happening in Pilibhit. So there's a huge cartel of these institutions. We can call them IELTS institutions, or we can call them visa agencies. So they are sending these students abroad, but they are using illegal means. So there's a procedure in IELTS exams that they have to give interviews. So for that interviews also, they are using lookalikes of the candidates, and they call them shooters. So they are sending these people outside the country without any credentials, without any financial backups. So for financial part also, they show fake transactions.
Okay, did you hear that? So he said they are using fake people to impersonate other people, to get them to qualify for language certifications, for all of these things, fake financial documents. So obviously, yes, this is taking place in India, and we will show more of that in a second. But the fact is, this is happening at alarming rates inside of Canada. And now, and they get into it later, it's happening more and more. Most of this documentary is actually focused on the US because the economic volume is higher there. But all of these things are going on with Canada right now.
As the scale of the scams unravel, ASP Vikram's teams move swiftly, raiding dubious IELTS centres, tracking down visa agents, and gathering testimonies from families who had been misled.
So we have subtitles here. I'm going to read along because what he says is very important, because this is what we're seeing in a lot of these cases that are coming over. People think I exaggerate when I talk about the amount of fraud and scams that are happening with this. It's way higher than any of the numbers you hear about. You please sit here. So where did you want to go? England. To study or work? To study, okay? Whom did you contact for heading abroad? In Puranpur, which is an area, we found an agent, Jagjit Singh, so one of the brothers Singh. As well, whenever I talk about these scams, I say they start in India, they recruit Indians, and they bring them over to Canada and the US. And people will say, well, you got to blame the colleges, you got to blame the government. No, we are watching this happen in real time. This is starting in India. It's all manifesting there.
जगजीत सिंह कौन सा इनका आइलेट सेंटर है
सर
He said, which language certification center was it? Now he's saying it's Casper Immigration.
कैस्पर इमिग्रेशन
अच्छा जब इन्होंने कागज तैयार करूंगा आइलेट का टेस्ट
This is where it gets important. Did you get the language certificate for English speaking proficiency? Did you get certified?
होता है इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग
हाँ जी सर वो नहीं हुआ था सर
वो तुम्हारा नहीं हुआ
No, I didn't. I didn't sit for the test. And he said, did someone else give it for you?
नहीं हुआ था सर
उन्होंने किसी और से करवाया था कैसे क्या
ये इतना नहीं पता सर हमें इतनी बात है हमारी
I don't know if someone took it. He said, that I don't know. And he said, but you received a certificate?
सर्टिफिकेट भी देते हैं ना तो वो दिया था उन्होंने
हाँ जी दिए थे सर
Yes. So he received a certificate from Casper Immigration. They gave him his certifications. Even though he has no English certification, it's getting put on his profile that he's certified.
लेकिन आप
But you didn't show up for the test, right?
नहीं दिया
ना सर हमने
No.
14
The agent charged him $17,000 in cash, USD. So now, just the sheer millions and millions that these fake recruiters with these fraudulent scams are making doesn't actually include the economic impact that it's having when these people get to England, when they get to the US, when they get to Canada with these fraudulent permits, and then they take jobs, they suppress wages, and it's 100% based on scams. This is why I'm saying it doesn't matter in the US, it doesn't matter in Canada. We need a 100% full stop on immigration from India today, right now.
लाख 14.5 लाख जो दिए वो कैश दिए थे अकाउंट में दिए थे
सर 3-3.5 लाख रुपए इन्होंने दिया था अकाउंट में बाकी सब कैश
Paid $4,100 transfer and the rest in cash.
ठीक है कल आप ये जो पासपोर्ट अपना पासपोर्ट लेके आएंगे ओरिजिनल अकाउंट जिससे तुम्हारे पिताजी ने पैसे
So he's asking him to bring all the information so they can see which account he transferred for his father. To see which account his father transferred the money from, sorry.
As Pilibhit's police close in on cross-border smugglers, they are also working with authorities in Delhi.
Wait till this person says this here and then let me know if it reminds you of anything.
Among them, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Usha Rangnani, who's been leading efforts to clamp down on illegal immigration rackets from Delhi airport.
The biggest challenge is the transnational nature of the crime.
Transnational nature of the crime because those scammers start in India, but they have full infrastructures and organizations inside of Canada, inside of the US, which are having massive economic, social impacts.
There used to be many agents from Punjab and Haryana. That is still the highest in number.
That's the part that I wanted to include because they say, oh, it used to just be the Punjabis and the Haryani boys. Yeah, which you see on the vehicles. People have their Punjab vehicles, they have the Haryana vehicles. They put stickers on their bumper stickers, all those things. We can see who's doing it. But then she says, now it's all over.
But now the pattern has shifted to almost all the cities and states of India.
That's the other part that I wanted to show you. Now it's all over India. It doesn't matter where it's from. This is happening. Just from sheer numbers, there's over 1.4 billion of them. So I'm sure there's finding lots of people to sign up for these situations. Speaking of country problems and us being superior to the US, shout out to Canada, shout out to Kirk. The rate of property crimes in Canada is now higher than the United States. Property crime, Canada has almost 2,000 instances per 100,000, and the US is down to only almost 1,900 per 100,000. The old Canada that Canadians still romanticize is long gone, and before you guys say that's not true, I brought up this article here. This is from Stats Canada, the government stat agency, and it said in 2023, property crime rate in Canada was 1995 incidents per 100,000 population, slightly higher, about 5% higher than the recorded rate of the United States. Canada number one. Canada number one. Suck it, US. We're so much better at crime now. And we have this chart here where you can see Canada is the red line, and we have indeed passed above the blue American line. But we do have one of Canada's best and brightest top up-and-coming politicians really wanting to crack down on the crime. His name is Mandeep Dhaliwal, and he is very serious about the crime problem. Let's get into it.
Member for Surrey North.
Thank you, Speaker. Our community in Surrey is struggling. We have been under threat and violence for over a year. Crime and violence is everywhere. Businesses, families, communities are desperate for help and desperate for action. No other community experienced the violence and threat that Surrey has. 50 shootings in 1 year. We must thank our Surrey police. The police are doing everything they can to protect us with the limited resources.
This is one of Canada's best and brightest, and definitely deserves to be a member of a legislative assembly. Yes, he is reading off a piece of paper, struggling to do so, because obviously this gentleman has a very tenuous grasp of the English language, but that's not holding him back, because Mandeep Dhaliwal is a fighter for the people. And as he does mention that Surrey has some of the worst crime rates in across all of Canada, it's worth noting they do have a certain demographic there that has led to Mandeep Dhaliwal becoming the top politician. And before people get mad that I'm so pro-America on the channel and why I don't push back when I say, sure, if America takes us over, it's because we have people in our government who can't read English. They are unable to read it. So maybe being taken over by the US is a better choice than that. But for some people, it's not. And those people are Doug Ford himself and this compilation. So shout out to Rowan if he's the one who made this compilation. But this is a video montage of Ontario Premier Doug Ford, the #1 threat. You know, we call him Doug the liberal slug who stinks like a pug, Chub Ford himself on the channel. But he is the #1 threat to Canada-US trade relations and jobs and Ontario's economy. Personally drew the ire of President Trump and Commerce Secretary Lutnick with his ridiculous, unhinged, reckless, and highly inflammatory outbursts. This guy is in charge of Canada's largest province, just absolutely sewering Canadians, inflaming Americans. It's a hilarious clip. Let's just watch him back to back.
Premier of Canada's most populous territory, Ontario.
Province, not territory, but okay.
And Premier Ford, as we mentioned, President Trump is now saying he is enacting a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum from Canada, which will go into effect tomorrow in response to your actions. What's your reaction?
Could it be lights out in part of the U.S.? Listen to what Doug Ford says.
I will do everything, including cut off their energy, with a smile on my face. You think the people of Ontario are that dumb? Like, I'm gonna call you out and get one of those cans. I'm gonna rip that label off and encourage people to buy made in Ontario, made in Canada soup. And maybe what you should do is bring back your
one person clapping
manufacturing facility that you closed down in Etobicoke and got rid of hundreds of people. But I just can't stand sneaky companies that do stuff like that.
I can assure you one thing, we're going to make sure that we inflict as much pain as possible to the American people without inflicting pain on the Canadian population.
Literally impossible, but he did say they're going to inflict as much pain as possible on the American people.
So you know something, a message to the CEO in France, you hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you. You're going to feel the pain in February when these people don't have a paycheck. And I'm going to stand up for the people of Ontario, and I encourage all of Canadians, all of Ontarians, stand up for the people, because you don't know if you're next. But the thing that ticks me off, I get it. I get that companies move back and forth, but what I don't get, when you're someone's largest customer in North America, you're going after the largest customer. You know something? I always say smart people aren't too smart, and you guys are about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this.
Yeah, you guys should just allow us to take American IP, manufacture and assemble it in Canada, and then sell it back to you, or else you're very dumb. Shout out to Doug Ford with his very smart argument there. You know, he doesn't have the argument of wanting to develop Canadian industry, reinvest in Canadian businesses, create jobs through domestic innovation, capital investments, all things that would be good for the long-term economy of Canada. But no, instead, we got to bring in all these foreign entrepreneurs and absolutely destroy social cohesion because Doug Ford loves them. Shout out to the Dominion Society for their other clip of the BC politician. But yes, we can clearly see that the US wants more control over Canada's border security because these problems are impacting them, especially since they're saying a lot of the issues now are coming south from the Canadian border. So I'm not surprised he wants more cracking down to happen there. And it's probably a good thing, as we've seen Canada and the US share a common enemy, which is the Indian scammers who are bringing over people in the hundreds of thousands. Like I said, it is one of India's large profit centers now, which is remittances from the West sent back to India. So it's costing locals jobs and it is building up India, and it's being done through fraudulent economic means. There is no reason for us to continue to allow that. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.